Very good. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar titled Tariff, Landed Cost, Dynamics GP Addresses the Changing Market. Leading our webinar today is Carrie Reinholtz. As a seasoned Dynamics GP Senior Business Consultant, Carrie has deep and wide functional and technical expertise with Dynamics GP and related applications that further enhance GP's supply chain management, advanced distribution, and manufacturing modules. Carrie has over 20 years in designing landed cost solutions for clients focusing on domestic and international requirements. She also has been instrumental in guiding client implementations toward the best use of the Dynamics GP application within their organizations. As no two clients are the same in their supply chain, distribution, and manufacturing need, this has led to a wealth of developed expertise. Please join me in welcoming Carrie as our presenter.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. I'm super excited to go through with you guys today, landed cost processing. Landed cost is probably one of the most unused or unknown capabilities within Dynamics GP. Over the last several years, there have been extreme changes and challenges with capturing different types of landed cost IDs, such as freight, with the dramatic saga during COVID and afterwards, and more so now with the ever-changing tariffs marketplace that is taking place right now. So the industry has kind of moved this conversation to the forefront for a lot of companies. LBMC has been working diligently with many different companies over the last several years to streamline and standardize and automate an end-to-end solution for domestic and international requirements. So today we're going to focus on two different types of ways that we can handle landed cost processing. One of them is going to be focused around domestic purchase orders, and the other one is going to be focused around international purchase orders. There are some slight customizations that we have developed over time to help accommodate, and we will touch on those as we go. The first area that we're going to start with is your landed cost setup IDs. When we go through the different types of landed cost IDs that you have, oftentimes there's different nomenclatures behind the actual ID naming convention. We typically recommend that you associate your nomenclature of your landed cost IDs to be grouped by vendor ID and by the category type. So for example, in this first one off to the left, we have a landed cost ID type of freight. The vendor ID, the provider is C.H. Robinson, and they have a cost calculation method of a flat amount. Oftentimes there are different requirements based off of what your different landed cost ID types can be. There are three different cost calculation methods. One of them is flat amount. The other is flat amount per unit. And the third is percent of extended cost. The flat amount is probably one of the most common when we're talking about freight purposes, because that is spread out through the cost of the actual shipment. Where we see a flat amount is typically associated with a flat amount per unit on that item. So handling extra miscellaneous fees per unit cost. And then off to the right, we have our landed cost ID broken out by US Customs. In this example, it is a general import fee, and the product is going to be coming out of China. The reason why we kind of have it set up this way in this example is because US Customs has typically multiple different categories on the way that they bulk together their invoices. And we'll go through that a little bit further. There is an original amount and a percent that is noted down here below based off of your cost calculation method. So when you use a flat amount, you're going to have an originating amount, versus when you have a cost calculation method of a percent of extended cost, you would have a percentage. Obviously, you guys can see that we're at 149%. And one of the reasons why we recommend that you have your country of origin on where the product is coming out of on your landed cost ID nomenclature is because every country has a different landed cost ID. And so it is very easy to update in a constantly fluctuating and volatile marketplace, such as tariffs right now coming out of every country while they are being negotiated. So this number can be modified very easily. It is something that the users can adapt to very quickly because it's a one-stop shop. You come into your landed cost IDs, you're able to update them. The same would apply for freight. Excuse me, the same would apply for freight. It's a flat amount. And also these numbers are adjustable. It is just a soft repository once you set up the landed cost ID. And we'll get into that a little bit further down the line. The invoice match and the revalue for cost variance is very important. We want the system to work for you. We know that when you are placing a purchase order, that you will receive an invoice from that vendor. That is what takes us into the three-way match of an enter match process by leaving this indication turned on. And then the revalue inventory for cost variances should be selected in order for the system to update your unit cost properly when your cost changes come in. We typically steer away from tolerance percentages because it is a little bit contradictory of just general landed cost and doing your enter match. Your accrued purchases account and purchase price variance account, most customers, most clients of ours already have them set up. Oftentimes we will see that there's an accrued landed cost or a purchase price variance account that is specific to landed cost. So oftentimes they will be the same. That will be addressed later on down the line when we look at your received but not invoiced report. Moving on to the way that you guys can categorize different landed cost ID types. There is landed cost group IDs. If an item always has certain landed cost elements, you can group them and pre-assign them by item. So for example, grouping different import fees based off of US customs, such as duty, tariff, harbor maintenance fees, merchandise processing fees. You can delineate out those different types of import fees if you would like. Some users do that. Some companies have the requirements where they would like to see things broken out, or some like to just standardize it and have it as one bulk import fee. In this example, we have one import fee of 149%. There is also an indication in here for those of you that might be familiar with what's called your HTS codes. Those are your harmonized tariff schedule. Those HTS codes are used to classify merchandise imported into the United States. We have some customers that will classify items based off of the HTS code. This landed cost group ID is very flexible. Oftentimes you can use it by product ID. Like I was saying, that if an item always has certain landed cost elements, you can group them together, pre-assign them by item so that those landed costs can be entered into our next screen when we go to purchase the product. This is something that a lot of users are really adapting to these days because there is roll down capability when that item is already assigned to this landed cost group ID. I'll get into that right now. At your item quantities and sites window, we have a landed cost group ID that can be assigned per site. So when a purchase order is placed, that landed cost group ID will default. Oftentimes, it's for easier, simpler use so that whoever is purchasing the product does not have to go out there and enter it into their purchase order. But it is not a requirement. We're first going to go through a domestic purchase order and follow the process for landed cost. So when a purchase order is entered, we have in this example, a test item. I'm buying 10 units at $8. It's going to come into our Florida warehouse. You issue the purchase order as you normally would issue a PO. When the shipment receiving part comes into play, when the shipment actually comes into the facility, your shipping or receiving department or whomever is going to be receiving in a transaction type called a shipment. That shipment receipt has a lot of different meanings. There is several key pieces within this window that drives other pertinent data. One, when you enter a shipment, you have a vendor document number. That vendor document number is typically whatever we see on a bill of lading or a packing list from your vendors when the product is coming inbound. Your shipping and receiving department or whomever is receiving in the product will have some form of a packing slip or a bill of lading and provide you the details of your inbound activity. When that product comes in, a standard shipment receipt is entered. Then down at the bottom, you have a landed cost. When you select your landed cost, you will have a pop-up window that generates called Receiving's Landed Cost Apportionment. You will then enter your landed cost ID. In this example, we have freight. Our estimated total is $24.5223. And you have what's called an apportionment buy. Every customer is different. Some customers want to classify your apportionment by your weight, your value, or your quantity. When we talk about weight, it is based off of your item setup and configuration. So there is calculation that takes place off of your item maintenance window that generates what's called your weight calculation. Your value and your quantity are also an option. LBMC has created a very small custom piece to default the apportionment option based off of the landed cost ID so that users don't have to remember to select the proper drop down option. It kind of posed a couple of issues in the past where users would forget to drop down and apportion out the landed cost ID appropriately, but we can easily put in a small piece of code that will allow apportionment to be changed. From here, you will select whatever your apportionment is and close out of this window. When you close out of that window, you will have a landed cost functional total that then populates. This is just your inquiry window. This is your best estimate of what your invoice will be before it goes through the enter match process. From the inventory adjust cost window, after the shipment receipt is posted, it moves into what your estimated cost layer is going to be. So your estimated cost layer is going to be a quantity received of 10 units. And depending on your unit cost valuation, whether you have 3, 4, or 5-digit decimal place, you will see that there is some rounding capabilities within there. This is your estimate after step 1 of your enter of when you receive in your shipment receipt. And then we're going to move into your enter match for your invoice. So when your vendor sends you your invoice, as you normally would, there is a vendor ID that is associated with the first invoice. Actually, let me go back real quick to show you guys one more thing that I passed over. So off to the left, we have an inventory adjust cost window. This is your standard unit cost window. Most of you would probably be familiar with at this point. Off to the right, we have created an extended window. On a standard default, you do not have the inventory adjust, the inventory average cost window off to the right. We have customized this to fit a couple of different clients' needs where you can add in a couple of key pieces of information like shipping weight or list price or packaging quantity detail. What this will do will show you what the receipt came in, the purchase order, the date, the quantity, the cost, and if there is remaining, if the cost is still available, if the quantity is still available, and then an extended cost. The window inventory average cost, it is not for average cost. It is only a baseline because a lot of our clients said, hey, listen, we would like to see what our item site average is, provides what our item site average is for that specific item per location. So if you have multiple locations, it would show you those multiple locations.
Carrie, do you have time for a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, the question is there a cost for the customization for a portion buy?
There is. We do have, and we will kind of discuss this a little bit further. There are several pieces that we will provide as a part of a suite of a bundle of different options that are available, or we can individually provide that as an option.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mhm. Okay. So after you have your estimate cost at step number 1, you are waiting for your invoices to come in from your vendors. Your invoices have arrived from your vendors. You have an invoice that you go through for your standard purchase order as you normally would. This is your enter match type invoice number 1. Then we have our enter match invoice type number 2. I'd like to let you guys set some eyes on this particular window for 2 reasons. Number 1, off to the left, there is what is called an LC checkbox. This enables your landed cost functionality, which then changes your lookup type from an item to a landed cost type ID. So when you are selecting your enter match invoice, you would put your invoice that you have from your freight provider in this example, and the actual amount that is on the invoice. When you go through your match to shipment to invoice options, the system is going to match it to the receipt that you select. It is going to revalue inventory, and it is going to provide what your variance is. This all happens automatically. Once you enter match it against that receipt and that purchase order, you will see that there is a variance that kicks out. This is the way that you would continue to enter your enter match invoices. So it really has no bearing on one or the other. They can happen simultaneously. They can happen independently. If you receive your invoice from your first vendor before you receive it from your second vendor, that is not a problem. You guys can enter them as they are received and you go. After the enter match has been processed, your unit cost will get updated. So if we took a look at what our unit cost was at step number 1, when we had our estimate, we had a different value than we do now once our product is actually received in and our enter match has been issued against it. We're going to stop for one moment and do a polling question.
Yep, looks like it's time for poll question number 1. And if you see that window, what we're asking is, are you purchasing internationally, domestically, or both? Give you a few more moments to answer that. All right, everyone get their selections in. I'm going to end the poll. And Carrie, here are the results. 67% of the audience is doing both, international and domestic. 25% of the audience is doing domestic, and 8% is international.
Wow. That is a huge percentage of international. which
Yes.
I'm going to be very excited to show you guys this next portion. Okay. LBMC has created an in-transit ETA setup window. Oftentimes, when you're purchasing internationally, your product is coming out of what we consider a port of origin, location, country, etc. India, China, Sweden. When we set up this window, there is what we consider a port site, and it's called China. There are locations what are considered your in-transit location and your final destination location. And we have an estimate of dates on how long it's going to take. So coming from China, once it goes on the water, it would come into one of your final destination locations, and it would take on average perhaps 45 days. You can have multiple locations that your product travels to. So oftentimes people don't have just one location. They have 4 to 6 stocking locations that they could have all over the country. And that depends on when the product comes in, how long is it going to take to actually get there. This window is specific to how the next step works within purchase order entry. When a purchase order is created, a standard purchase order would be issued. You have off to the right a blue arrow pointing to the right that contains your purchasing vendor detail entry window. You have a ship to address ID that matches what our CDS Georgia location is. And then we have our site ID of coming out of China, so that when the product gets received in, the system from our custom window, our ETA setup window will say, if it's coming out of China, we want to route it to an in-transit to go into CDS Georgia. Lay some eyes down here below on your landed cost group ID. This landed cost group ID defaulted because when we set it up in our item quantity sites for our landed cost group IDs, our site ID was automatically populated for that landed cost ID according to that specific site. And that is why we recommend that somewhere in your landed cost group IDs, you have the country of origin, because that's important for you guys to be able to put together your country of origin with your locations and how it relates to your landed cost. Actually, I'm going to go back and mention something. Landed cost is not as forgiving. There's no second chance. This is the only opportunity to capture landed cost within the process is during our shipment receipt entry. Your landed cost group IDs are not required to be on your purchase orders. It is optional. When you receive in your shipment, there is no forgiveness. There's no second chance here. You have one opportunity to capture landed cost when your shipment receipt comes in. When your shipment comes in, it's the same as really a domestic. You're going to get a bill of lading. You're going to get a packing list. You're going to get informational data from your shipping and receiving department. When that shipment comes in to your facility, there is a vendor document number that we were mentioning, happens on any document. Usually people will reference a bill of lading or a container. A container number could be issued from your shipping department. When you select on landed cost under your inquiry window, you have a landed cost inquiry window that will show you, here's what your group ID was, and here's what your estimated value is. So as a part of that group ID, we had a landed cost ID inside of it that said, I want to charge X amount percent, 149% of the product that's coming in from China. You are still able to add additional landed cost IDs on top of that. So you have your standard group IDs, then you can add in whatever type of miscellaneous charges. In our example, we have freight, but you could have multiple different landed cost IDs that would accumulate. From here, this is user specific, so you would enter in whatever your landed cost IDs are, and then whatever your best estimate is. This is only your best estimate of what you guys have already negotiated or what it is that you guys anticipate receiving in from your vendors afterwards. Once you have entered in your information pertaining to your receivings of the landed cost IDs, there is an arrow here called your unit cost lookup. That brings you your receivings landed cost inquiry. You have a unit cost including landed cost estimate. Now, depending on some environments, you guys will have a different landed cost ID that's associated, or you might not. Once you have received, this is just taking you through posting. Once you've posted that shipment receipt and you validated your cost, you have what's called an in-transit transaction that's automatically created. This is a part of the LBMC customization that will take that first initial screen that we showed you guys and go from a site ID, moves it into in transit, and then moves it to your final destination. Notice up here on the right, we do carry over that bill of lading number or your container number, as most people reference. And then you have a tracking number. That tracking number, if you go back 2 slides, is your receipt number that comes over. So you've got your receipt number and you also have your bill of lading number that generates. Those will be carried forward to your in-transit transfer that automatically is created and you will ship it. Once you ship it, it's on a slow boat from China or coming over the border from Canada or Mexico or wherever the product is coming in. After you post your shipment receipt, it moves to what we consider into your unit cost window of your origin. Typically, people just reference it as a port, but whatever your origin, whatever your port site ID is. Then, by the in-transit taking place, you are moving that product out of the port into in-transit, and it lifts and shifts at the same time whatever dollar values it is that we have received as an estimate after that shipment receipt has been posted. Once it does come into your final destination site, there is an additional window, and I just kind of expanded this one out so that you guys could see just different customers have different requirements. And this window doesn't have the added information into it. This is customizable, just to keep in the back of your brains. It's customizable. Some people want to see certain information, others do not. So this is very helpful when you're looking to see what your originating cost was after it has been moved in and you are waiting for your invoices to arrive and the product has already come into your final destination site. When it does arrive into your final destination location, you will do what's called a receiving of an in-transit inventory transaction. There is some relevance behind the nomenclature that I will bring you guys back to that I missed. I apologize. When your in-transit is created, we also take what's called your document number, and instead of a long, obnoxious in-transit number that generates, we actually take your in-transit number and it gets created with an IT at the beginning dash your PO number. Sometimes people will have multiple releases off of a PO. And so we will do a -01, -02, -03, because there could be partials that are received against your original PO. So when that in-transit document number comes in, there is relevance behind it because it ties directly to your PO number. When you're looking at your in-transit receipt, you will see that your in-transit transfer comes in. You can automatically receive it in. through the auto receipt option. And then just as a relationship side, we do work with Panatrack. We have partnered with Panatrack, who handles barcode scanning, fulfillment of sales orders, purchase orders, WMS type of a solution. We partnered with Panatrack to create the in-transit receiving from handheld devices, which is optional. So if you have Panatrack, we can receive in transit inventory transactions from our handheld devices, which is again optional. When it comes in, that in transit transfer will automatically get, you can also set it up to automatically post. There are a couple of customers rather that we work with that have automatic posting tools that are out there that can post these real time coming in if needed. But again, it's not a requirement. Something also that we found is very helpful is using your batch IDs. So when you're batch IDing these out, oftentimes we recommend whoever is the user that's receiving it along with the date so that there's visibility on when it actually comes in, but the transaction date should supply that information. But just batch nomenclature, typically we recommend to use user ID and date. Our purchasing invoice entry match option for invoice number 1. So your vendor will provide you an invoice. You'll be able to go through and adjust your invoice accordingly as you normally would if there's any cost variances for that unit cost for the vendor. We always recommend seeing this up front with a lot of different customers over the years. What we have seen is that users will take this as an opportunity to gather all of their costs and then change it at the time that they're entering their first invoice. Well, then that loses your visibility in terms of categorization on where your cost is actually coming from. Your unit cost for your product is separate from your freight, duty, tariff, any type of import fees, drayage, miscellaneous charges, handling charges. You lose the visibility by entering it just in one place like this. So you would proceed with entering in your vendor invoice as you normally would. Then we would receive an invoice number 2. In this example, we'll have U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Oftentimes, you're not going to get that invoice for a period of time when the shipment comes in. It could be days later. When that shipment comes in, it is placed into inventory in your system at a specific cost. When we do your enter match invoices, this is the second down of the third one that we have. So for U.S. Customs, you guys will receive your invoice. We can checkbox your landed cost. We would assign whatever it is and match it to that specific receipt. There's 2 things that are excellent about this window. One, when you are revaluing inventory through FIFO perpetual, which I would say it's kind of 80-20 rule, most clients that we service these days are on some form of a FIFO cost method. There are a couple that are on average. Average cost does not work with landed cost. Any type of FIFO or LIFO does. If we have our revaluation that is taking place and your inventory has already been sold, what happens is when this variance takes place, it looks at your different cost layers and recognizes that. And when your variance gets booked, it will get booked to a cost of goods sold or whatever our adjusting entry is. So there is a journal entry that rolls down if that product has already been sold. It is a misconcept of users that I have worked with over years that think we need to hold on to that product until we get all of our invoices. Well, that doesn't work in most environments. You cannot stage your information or hold your information until you get these invoices from your vendors. So one of the most important things for you guys to be able to leverage also is the visibility of what have I received in but not invoiced. And we'll get to that report a little bit later. Once you revalue your inventory through standard FIFO layers, is going to go back and it is going to revalue your inventory from the time that you received it into the port to when it was in transit, or whether it has been received into your final destination site. So you can also do your match to shipment options and your enter match invoice while the product is in transit. So you have the ability to do your enter match in both different scenarios. If your product is on the water, you cannot wait 30 to 45 days or 60 days sometimes for the product to come in, or if it's coming in from one of the border states as well, border countries as well. You cannot wait to receive in those invoices. So you do not need to receive in the shipment. It could be in transit, and that variance will automatically populate. It's good for users to put some eyes on this window when they're actually going through the revaluation. It ties back to your revalue of inventory setup at your landed cost ID window, and also your match option. That's your checkbox indicator that the light bulb went off in GP that said, okay, I'm anticipating getting an invoice in later. I'm going to move on to the second invoice. So we've got another invoice for our vendor that came in for freight. Notice the originating amount that we had was about a $2,000 estimate. Well, for those of you that have been in the freight industry, sometimes you guys have negotiated pricing. Sometimes there's other surcharges, all different types of miscellaneous freight charges that come in. Usually people have gotten a much better handle on freight, and so that has been negotiated up front. If it hasn't, and you guys have extra charges for whatever types of forms, reasons, etc., that is totally fine. There is no problem with that. When you go through, it would be the same thing. You would head up your match option. You match it to that specific receipt when it has been received in, and it will do your variance and adjustments for you. This is probably one of the biggest areas of the system that users are not familiar with, because they haven't ever seen the landed cost functionality, but they've always seen this little checkbox off to the left and they never knew what it did. When you hover over it, your landed cost checkbox will get enabled. So a lot of users are already using this because you're purchasing product, you're receiving shipments against it, and you're already doing your enter match. So when we add this functionality in here, it then opens up the capability for the landed cost revaluation to take place. Once you post your landed cost invoices and your purchase order invoices, your unit cost estimate after your enter match invoice is completed has been updated. What happens through your different cost layers is they need to stay consistent so that there is traceability throughout the life cycle of that purchase order. So step number one, when we issued the PO, we issued the purchase order to the port site in China. It then was moved to in transit, and the system will go back and automatically revalue that inventory as of that date. So it will say it is now $330.56. And I've got another cost layer at 0.61 cents. Again, just a little bit of a variance depending on what your currency decimal places are. So the further out your currency decimal places, the more accurate your reporting is going to be, especially when you're doing international product because of percentage reasons. I'm going to move over to what our final destination location is. So then it ends up, so it's gone through your port of origin or your country of origin. It's gone through your in transit. And then it finally hits your, when you expand these line items out, just so you guys can see this, there's a quantity received. That quantity received will then state underneath what receipt number it came in on. This is a split layer. This is to accommodate your rounding variances, because mathematically, the smaller it is that your decimal place is, the less capable it is to have everything at one cost layer because of rounding and such. Once you have gone through and processed and taken a look at all of your enter match invoices and everything has been processed successfully, notice that there is a quantity sold field that sits inside of your inventory adjust cost. This is what I was mentioning. When the system recognizes that those cost layers have already been sold, it is going to recognize that there needs to be a journal entry that is happening to roll down your cost of goods sold adjustments for your product that has already been sold at a different cost layer because we have not received in all of our invoices yet. It's what I was going back to you guys about a few minutes ago, saying it's a complete misconcept that people think that they have to hold on to invoices. If you think about maybe some customers that are in a expiration type of environment, like a food industry, that is not going to work for them to have to sit on food and wait till you do your enter match invoice to be able to capture or sell your inventory. Once, maybe not once a month, I shouldn't say once a month. Hopefully there are multiple points of time that your company is reconciling your inventory to your general ledger. There is, for reporting options, a historical inventory trial balance report, also known as the HITB report. The HITB report can be generated in detail or summary. The relevance behind this report is to say, here is what item it is that I have, in which site ID, and where is it at in terms of my GL? Where does that inventory actually reside within my general ledger, in that site ID? And then down here towards the bottom, it'll give us our grand total of how many it is that we have on hand with our value. I'm going to take you guys back to the previous screenshot so that you guys can see down here at the bottom, under our inventory average cost window, we have our total of what our on hand is and our total quantity. That ties directly to your HITB report that should be used at a weekly or monthly basis for reconciliation. As you go through and you receive in your product, you have cost layer adjustments. You will notice that in here is a part of your HITB report. This window will indicate how it came in. So there is a cost layer adjustment versus a POP receipt. And we get into this when we go through training with you guys, so you know how to read an HITB report and can understand where those sources come from. So in our example, we received in a purchase order, and then we did a cost revaluation, which increased our cost of our product. That is an essential window for reconciling. There is also, just to kind of point out in here, variance quantities. When you are adjusting out, it's nice for you guys to visually see a report that comprehensively states, here's what my original cost layer is. I'm either increasing, or hopefully for some of you guys, maybe decreasing what your estimate is, because it's not always an increase. It can be a decrease as well. So you could be plus or minus, right? It's not always going to be an increase. So you would see a negative in here is a decrease to reduce the cost of the product, if that is the case. And this is very, very helpful for reconciliation, any type of month-end process. The cool thing too about your HITB report is that you guys export it to Excel. And we have done some fancy little color schema for other clients so that they can take this information, slice it and dice it at a summary level and not detail. So some people don't want to see detail because it's TMI. The next report is your received but not invoiced. So throughout the process, you guys need to have visibility of what is received but not invoiced for two reasons. One, what have I received but not invoiced for my vendor that I purchased the product from? And then what have I received but not invoiced for my landed cost? There is a report that sits out here called an RBNI, received but not invoiced report. We have made some slight modifications so that it is easier for users to be able to see, here's what my accrued landed cost is versus my accrued purchases, and gives you a report total. I'm a color schema type of person myself, so keeping the differences between the two colors kind of indicates the types of activity that's happening between standard purchase orders or landed cost. This is a way to facilitate also in cleanup exercise. I have not received in my invoice, where's my landed cost invoice, or where's my invoice from the vendor? This means that you guys have not done your enter match against it. And when you tie this to other areas of potential reports that we have created, we have integrated Smart List Builder, Smart View reports into this process, because users want to see, hey, I need to see what I've got on received but not invoiced reports. I need to see what my open purchase orders are. That should be a part of your weekly or month-end closing process to monitor what open purchase orders are out there, to see if you guys have received in your enter match invoice against it. And if you have not, you guys can proactively instead of reactively reach out to your vendors to find out what's the holdup.
Oh, we've got
We
another
can go
poll
on.
question. Yeah.
Got another poll.
So you've seen a lot of functionality today. So the question is, would you like to take the next step in discussing your specific landed cost setup? So yes, as soon as possible. Yes, but in a few weeks. Or no, this doesn't apply to us. Give you a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, a few seconds. If you also, while people are finishing up with their poll questions, we've got some upcoming GP office hours. I've put those in the chat if you'd like to access those registration pages right away. All right, I'm going to be closing this down. Please indicate your preference here. And what I'll be doing for those of you, to half our audience who has said that they would like to take the next step, I'll be passing this along to our strategic account managers who will be following up. So thank you for your input.
Great. It's wonderful.
All right.
Let me come back over here.
There you go. Thank you, Carrie. As I mentioned, one of the things that we want you to have a wonderful experience as not just a GP user, but as an LBMC Tech GP user. And our office hours are a way to help you get the most out of your product. So I wanted to point out some upcoming webinars that we will be having. In May, Brian Wilton will be presenting archiving data in your Dynamics GP system. In June, we're going to be looking at sort of the entire not the entire Microsoft network in this particular webinar, but particularly Power Pages. There are so many tools that Microsoft is making available, one of them being Power Pages. And we'll be showing how those can work with Dynamics GP in June. And then coming up in July, for those of you who use the inventory module, Sandy Wickman is going to be presenting Inventory You Can Be in Control. So we look forward to seeing you at any or all of those offerings that we have coming up. And then the next slide. Community Summit will be here before we know it. It seems like we just closed out the last one, but we're already putting plans together for October in Orlando. Two things I'd like you to know. One, we have a discount code that you can use for registration. It's right there. It's LBMC Tech NO 10. And one thing to be aware of is that you can't use it in conjunction with other discounts. So we discovered that a couple of weeks ago. One of our clients had entered in taking advantage of a group discount, and then they went to enter in our code. And so you can't use both. But if you are just doing a handful of registrations and you don't qualify for the group discount, you might want to take advantage of that. Or if you take advantage of the group discount and then you have colleagues who you decide at a later date would like to attend, you can certainly use our discount code for them. The second is that, as we normally do, we're going to be having a customer appreciation dinner at Community Summit. The great news is that it is right on the Gaylord property, so you don't have to worry about getting to and from. And it's going to be at the Moore. So I've got, as I mentioned before, I'll be sending out slides and a link to Carrie's recording. Once the recording is rendered, I'll get those emails out to you, and it will have this link to RSVP for our customer dinner.
Awesome.
And next slide. Oh, that brings us to the end of the presentation. Carrie, thank you so much for all of the information. It was really kind of a dense presentation with a lot of good information for our audience to take advantage of. We still have a
Thank
couple of
you.
more minutes. Last chance for questions, if you have any. We want you to take advantage of our team here. Let's see. Brad has raised his hand, and let me see if I can unmute him. Brad, you should be able to. Let's see. You should have permission to talk. Do you want to give it a whirl? You might want to unmute. Hmm. I'm sorry that that's not working. Let's see if it's in the Q&A. Oh, he errantly raised his hand. So yeah, that happens. No worries. And I think that's it. So Carrie, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you all so much.
Yes. And we look forward to seeing everybody at a future GP office hours. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you.